Putin is in a panic over the possibility of a coup and being removed from power. There is a sense of panic in the Kremlin as they are running out of cards to keep playing the game, while US President Donald Trump is tightening the screws on Russia with new sanctions. This is reported by The Telegraph, which notes that the position of the Russian Federation is beginning to weaken. The fact that paranoia has intensified in the Kremlin is also evidenced by the recent accusation by Russia's FSB against Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who now lives in London, and 22 members of the Russian anti-war committee, alleging that they were preparing a coup d'etat. They have been charged with violent seizure of power and the creation of a terrorist organization. The grounds for these accusations were the declaration adopted in 2023 in Berlin by the Russian anti-war committee, as well as the creation of a platform for Russian democratic forces at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. According to the Security Service, Khodorkovsky presents this platform to Western countries as a constituent assembly for a transitional period and as an alternative to the authorities of the Russian Federation. Experts describe such actions as a manifestation of Putin's new sense of vulnerability. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine John Herbst noted,
"The Kremlin is paranoid. Putin is looking for enemies to strengthen his regime."
According to the expert, Putin is being overly cautious. He says that the FSB's accusations indicate the Kremlin's fear regarding the transfer of power. After all, in the event of Putin's death, there is no obvious successor.
A prime minister appointed by Putin, courts and parliaments whose legitimacy is questionable. That is the reality of Russia.
Experts also note that the international legitimacy of the Russian opposition could become a key factor in the event of a sudden change of power. That is precisely why the Kremlin is trying to discredit and intimidate the anti-war committee. Since coming to power, Putin has systematically eliminated those who oppose him, writes The Telegraph, recalling Yevgeny Prigozhin, who tried to march on Moscow by force. He was defeated and his uprising failed.
This is not a military coup. This is a peaceful march for justice, for the people.
Putin is also afraid of his own generals, according to opposition figure Mikhail Khodorkovsky. The war has been going on for 3.5 years, yet the names of the so-called heroes are kept quiet.
The main reason, in my opinion, is that the Kremlin is pathologically afraid of popular military leaders, afraid that someone like Bonaparte will suddenly emerge from the ranks of the army and, following Prigozhin's example, turn the troops in a completely different direction.
Meanwhile, Russia's economy is beginning to collapse. The Ministry of Economic Development has warned the country is on the verge of recession. According to Thomas Keating from the Royal United Services Institute, Russia's economic weakness may push external players to take more active measures. Experts claim that China's leader Xi Jinping could stop the war and bring down the Russian Federation's economy if he wanted to. The main buyers of Russian oil, India and China, have already reduced their purchases in response to the US decision on sanctions. This could result in Putin's war machine losing its most crucial sources of income. Moreover, the war is affecting the population as well. Across the country, plumes of smoke rise above Russian oil refineries after attacks by Ukrainian drones. This leads to a sharp spike in gasoline prices and a fuel shortage.
Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is ready to accept the US concept for resolving the war in Ukraine and move forward on the proposed basis. This statement was made by the head of the aggressor country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov. He noted that the parties agreed to take a break to consider the proposals. Lavrov added that the US allegedly did not respond directly to this proposal. According to media reports, the US President Donald Trump's peace plan may involve a managed freezing of the conflict. Trump had previously stated that both sides should stop hostilities along the front line. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky agreed to this.
"We need to stop where we are now. Trump is right. And then we can start talking about how to take steps toward a long-term peace."
In addition, during a conversation with journalists, Donald Trump stated that Russia's war against Ukraine could become the 9th conflict he manages to resolve. According to the American leader, he believes that this will happen. On October 16th, US President Donald Trump held a phone conversation with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, after which he announced a new meeting with him in Budapest. It was noted that initially, the foreign ministers of the two countries, Sergei Lavrov and Marco Rubio, were supposed to meet. Soon after, Trump announced that he had cancelled the planned meeting with the Russian dictator. According to him, negotiations with Putin lead nowhere. At the same time, as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated, a ceasefire plan will be prepared within 7 to 10 days. However, according to him, it is unlikely that Putin will accept it. On the evening of October 26, drones attacked Moscow and the Moscow region. The mayor of the Russian capital, Sergei Sobyanin, reported on the repulsion of the attack in his Telegram channel. Amid the explosions, Domodedovo and Zhukovsky airports were closed. A photo of a mobile fire group near the Kremlin also appeared online. Some Telegram channels even reported that the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin was allegedly urgently evacuated from the capital. The attack on Moscow continued into the night. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, it was the most massive attack in recent times. They reported that air defense forces allegedly shot down 193 UAVs in Russian regions, including 34 drones heading for Moscow. The day before, on October 26th, Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation, reported that military airfields in the Moscow region and other areas were under attack. Political analyst Kirill Sazonov also wrote in his Telegram channel about explosions in the Moscow region near the airfield where Tu-160, Tu-95MS, and Tu-22M3 bombers are based. According to him, drones also attacked airfields in the Kaluga region. And then, on the morning of October 27th, an unknown bright green object resembling a meteorite flew over Moscow. It streaked across the city and disappeared, leaving a bright trail behind. According to the Telegram channel, MASH, most likely space debris or a piece of a satellite burned up in the atmosphere. Meanwhile, the attacked dam of the Belgorod reservoir continues to let water through at an intense rate. According to Telegram channels, the water poses a threat to the positions of Russian troops. As reported by the Telegram channel Ash of Belgorod, in the area of the village of Grafovka and downstream along the Syrskyi Donets, dugouts where Russian soldiers were located have been flooded. Units of the 128th, 116th, 68th, and 136th Brigades of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, which were operating in the Volchansk direction, have come under threat. US President Donald Trump responded to the statement by Russian dictator Vladimir Putin about the testing of the Burevestnik missile. Answering journalists' questions, he reminded Putin that the US has nuclear submarines stationed not far from Russia.
They know that we have a nuclear submarine, the largest in the world, right off their shores.
Trump noted that he is not playing games with Russia. In his opinion, Putin should be thinking about ending the war he started against Ukraine, not about testing missiles.
I believe that Putin shouldn't be talking about this. He should end the war. A war that was supposed to last a week is about to enter its fourth year. That's what he should be doing, not testing missiles.
On October 26th, Putin held a meeting with the head of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, during which he boasted about the tests of the Burevestnik nuclear missile. Gerasimov reported to Putin about the tests of a nuclear-powered cruise missile with unlimited range, which took place on October 21st. The missile was allegedly in the air for about 15 hours and covered 14,000 kilometers. Russia had previously conducted multiple tests of the Burevestnik, all of which ended in failure. For example, in 2019, west of the city of Arkhangelsk, an explosion occurred during an attempt to lift a cruise missile from the seabed near the Russian Navy's missile test range. 5 Russian nuclear energy specialists were killed. Anatoly Krapchinsky, deputy general director of a company specializing in electronic warfare systems, notes that at least 13 tests of the Burevestnik nuclear missile have ended in failure. And on October 22nd, the Russians launched a Yars intercontinental ballistic missile in Kamchatka. According to the aggressor country, the Yars has a strike range of up to 12,000 kilometers.
Urban combat continues in Pokrovsk, Donetsk region, but the Russian occupiers do not have full control over any district. This was reported by the 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Air Assault Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Ukrainian defenders noted,
"Recently, our defense has been reinforced with new units, in particular assault troops, artillery, UAV crews, and other components of the defense forces. We are increasing the use of anti-aircraft drones and net launchers against enemy Mavics. Additionally, we are remotely mining the enemy's infiltration routes."
Special forces from the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine have been deployed to the Pokrovsk direction, reports war correspondent Andriy Saplienko. He claims that on the orders of Kirilo Budanov, active military intelligence units have already begun cooperating with the armed forces of Ukraine and have started carrying out combat missions. Saplienko writes that the special forces of the main intelligence directorate are focused on counter-sabotage operations and eliminating enemy groups that have managed to infiltrate directly into the city of Pokrovsk. The war correspondent also publishes a video showing a swarm of Ukrainian drones over Pokrovsk, which are controlling the skies. Media outlets, citing officers from 2 brigades, reported that there are at least 250 Russians in Pokrovsk. They are engaged in firefights in the city neighborhoods. At the same time, Ukrainian serviceman Stanislav Bunyatov said that, according to a captured occupier, Russian President Vladimir Putin has given the order to capture the city by mid-November. Let us recall that the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, Valery Gerasimov, reported to Putin about the so-called successes of the occupiers and paid special attention to Pokrovsk. The Kremlin is trying to convince the international community that 3,000 Ukrainians are encircled in order to put pressure on Kyiv and Washington. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky denied that Ukrainian troops were encircled in the areas of Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, TSN reports. In a phone interview given to TV host Alamazur, the head of state emphasized, "This is a complete lie, and not the first one." The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that the situation in the Pokrovsk-Mirnorad agglomeration area and the Okheretyn sector of the Pokrovsk direction remains difficult. The enemy has numerical superiority and is intensifying its offensive efforts. Units of the armed forces and 2 components of Ukraine's defense forces continue to conduct defensive as well as search and strike and assault operations in certain sectors, inflicting significant losses on the enemy.
In total, there were 124 combat engagements over the past day. Over the past day, enemy losses amounted to 800 Russian invaders killed and wounded. Ukrainian soldiers also destroyed 2 tanks, 3 armored combat vehicles, 34 artillery systems, 1 multiple launch rocket system, 547 operational tactical level drones, and 138 units of automotive equipment belonging to the Russian occupiers.
In addition, Ukrainian fighters released a video showing a MiG-29 crew striking a checkpoint with hammer bombs where enemy forces were gathering in the north.
Russian Telegram channels are publishing videos allegedly showing a Ukrainian Flamingo missile flying over Moscow on the night of October 27. At that time, explosions were heard in the Russian capital, and Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin reported that a drone attack had been repelled. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, the attack was the largest in recent times. The ministry stated that air defense forces had allegedly shot down 34 drones heading for Moscow. There is no confirmation that the Flamingo missile was used during the attack on Moscow. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine has already used domestically produced Flamingo and Ruta missiles against the enemy. He said this while speaking with journalists. The head of state noted that both missiles had seen combat use. However, he did not provide any details. Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine is doing everything to ensure that these are not isolated uses of the missiles but significant ones. Explosions are also occurring in other Russian cities. For example, on the evening of October 22nd, explosions were heard in the Russian city of Kopeysk near Chelyabinsk. The incident occurred at a military plastics factory. According to official data, 13 people were killed at the facility. Local authorities claim that the cause of the incident was allegedly a violation of safety regulations. At the same time, local residents reported online about a drone attack.
Just now a guy came by from the plastics plant. He said he was all scraped up, covered in blood. He said that 3 drones flew in.
And on October 21st, the defense forces struck the Bryansk chemical plant. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the strike was carried out, among other things, with air-launched Storm Shadow missiles, which managed to penetrate the Russian air defense system. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Pokrovsk in the Donetsk region remains the main target for the Russians. As the head of state told journalists, about 200 occupiers have infiltrated the city. Zelensky noted that despite the enormous resources the aggressor country is deploying to capture Pokrovsk, all enemy attempts have been unsuccessful.
Just imagine how many Russian forces are there, yet they still haven't achieved their planned result. In my opinion, they currently do not have the kind of outcome they could present to the Americans.
The president added that the Russians have thrown all their forces at Pokrovsk because they are unable to take Kupiansk. He reported that over the past 6 months, Dobropilya and Pokrovsk have yielded 2,200 Russian prisoners, and their losses are much greater. Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke about how strikes by Ukrainian defense forces on oil refining facilities deep inside Russia have significantly impacted the aggressor country's economy. According to him, Russia has lost more than 20% of its oil refining capacity and up to 27% of its fuel production. The head of state noted that as a result of the strikes, several Russian oil refineries were damaged, forcing the occupiers to redistribute fuel volumes among other facilities. He also mentioned that sanctions imposed by United States President Donald Trump could reduce the Kremlin's revenues by about $5 billion per month and affect 56 to 57% of oil exports. Volodymyr Zelensky also commented on the possible peace negotiations. According to him, if the trilateral meeting brings a positive result for Ukraine and helps end the war, then it does not matter where it takes place, as long as it is not in Russia or Belarus. A video showing the aftermath of the strikes on the Belgorod Reservoir Dam has appeared online. The footage shows that water has started flooding the roads, which Russians used as logistical routes, and the occupiers' equipment is sinking in the swamp. The flooding of positions is being reported by the Russian soldiers themselves.
This is what the dub position looks like now. It's flooded. The water has overflowed the banks, covering the entire road. Flooding. Here the vehicle is standing in water. It stopped and can't get out.
The Belgorod Reservoir was attacked for the first time on the night of October 25th. At that time, local authorities claimed that the reservoir dam was allegedly attacked by HIMARS missiles. Later, the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Brody Madjar, confirmed that the Ukrainian armed forces struck the dam, as a result of which part of the Russian troops were cut off from supplies and crossings. Overall, the Ukrainian armed forces have achieved certain successes on the front line. On October 26, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed the liberation of 2 settlements in the Donbas, Kuchrov Yar and Sukhetskoye. Soon after, it became known that the defense forces had liberated another settlement, Zatishok. At the same time, the enemy continues active attacks in the Pokrovsk direction. As stated by the head of state Volodymyr Zelensky during a conversation with journalists, Pokrovsk remains the main target for the Russians. According to him, the occupiers have thrown all their forces there because they are unable to take Kupiansk. The president noted that the aggressor country continues to suffer enormous losses. In just half a year, 2,200 Russian soldiers were taken prisoner in Dobropilya and Pokrovsk.
The Russian economy is sinking into recession while Kremlin TV propagandists are seeing their personal incomes grow at unprecedented rates. Over the past 4 years, the salaries of Olga Skabieva and Evgeny Popov have increased by 1.5 times. According to The Insider, the couple recently bought a house in the elite Novakovo settlement near Moscow on the Novorishskoye highway, an aristocratic location. That's how this elite settlement is described. As investigator Sergei Yezhov explained on the YouTube channel Popular Politics,
it's styled after classic Russian estates. And apparently this is something that feels genetically close to the Russian elite. So it seems, yes, Skabieva and Popov now consider themselves part of a kind of aristocracy as well.
According to archived listings for the house, it was initially put up for sale for about 170 million rubles, but eventually the price dropped to 150 million. The house has 4 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a swimming pool, a kitchen dining room, a living room, an office, a laundry room, and a wood-fired sauna. This is the kind of property propagandists can afford. Olga Skabieva's current salary is about 1,850,000 rubles per month. That's more than 22 million a year. The last time the couple's income was made public before this was in 2021. At that time, Skabieva was earning 15,200,000. After that, information about the earnings of State Duma deputies' families, including Yevgeny Popov, was classified. Before the State Duma elections in 2021, Popov tried to hide his real income. But in the end, even the Moscow City Election Commission exposed the propagandist manipulations. Already as a deputy, Yevgeny Popov declared an income for the year 2001 of more than 18 million rubles. The last years of the war have also been profitable for him. Now, like his wife, he earns significantly more. From the Rossiya TV channel, he receives on average 1,300,000 per month. and his salary in the State Duma is about $500,000 per month, as well as periodic payments from the Zenani Society, where he is listed as a lecturer, and from the advertising agency Wild Jam.
The so-called work of these propagandists, whose job is simply to lie and spread hatred every day, is valued several times higher than even the work of legislators. That is, the people who write laws and press the buttons.
The Rossiya TV channel, which airs the Popov and Skabiva show, is part of a state media holding. For the past 25 years, it has been headed by Oleg Dobrodev, who owns property worth millions. Dobrodev's official salary is relatively modest, about 700,000 rubles a month. However, he regularly receives payments of 15 million from the National Advertising Alliance. This company was established as a unified platform for selling TV advertising. The same scheme of receiving 15 million ruble payments several times a year from the National Advertising Alliance is also used by Channel 1's CEO, Konstantin Ernst. At the same time, his salary at Channel 1 is 850,000 rubles a month. But the CEO of NTV, Alexei Zemsky, is not so modest. Over the past year, he received an average of 17 million rubles per month from the channel, which is part of Gazprom's state media holding and survives on government subsidies. The collaborator Tatyana Montian has been added to the list of terrorists and extremists by the Russian Federation. This happened after reports against her from Alexander Matyushin, a militant of the so-called DPR, and propagandist Vladimir Solovyov, who accused her of stealing money collected for Russian soldiers.
I don't care about your worthless reports and certificates. That has nothing to do with me. That's a matter for the tax authorities, the money you receive and how it's spent. How are you any different from info gypsies? Is it because you help the front? Great. What percentage of the money goes to you and what percentage goes to the front? What kind of reporting do you do? What kind of organizational structure do you have?
And in the fact that she is trying to gain political influence.
Scumbags like Montian are trying to score political points off real problems with the water supply.
Solovyov also claimed that Montian insults the Kremlin's leader.
No, that's not how it is at all. Control over people is necessary, writes Montian. A takeover is being prepared. Hey, you who swore at my president, what are you doing in my country? Who brought you here, and in what capacity?
Montian was outraged at being included on the list of extremists and blamed the singer Shaman for it. According to her, it was all because she called him a talentless hack fighting for 16 million in fees. And she said that money could have been used to buy what the fighters at the front actually need. Montian added sarcastically,
For words like that, you can now be accused not only of fake extremism, but of something even more serious.
Montian began her career in Ukraine as a lawyer and human rights activist. In 2013, she spoke out against Euromaidan and supported the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine. And eventually she moved to Russia, where she became actively involved in anti-Ukrainian propaganda. It was reported that she bought real estate in Moscow, despite officially having no income.
It was reported that she bought real estate in Moscow, despite officially having no income. Treason? Absolutely.
With aggravating circumstances.
After Montian became the author of a Telegram channel specifically for RT in Ukraine in 2023, a case was opened against her for inciting the seizure of power.
About the claim that I'm supposedly pro-Russian. Where did you even get that idea, guys?
At the same time, already a citizen of the Russian Federation, Montian was criticized by ZOO. It is unknown where Montian is currently located. However, her blog continues to be updated.
Warming up with wet hair on my head, intellect measured by the meter on my wrist. My Russia is sitting in prison, and in the damage, this will pass.
The lead singer of the street band Stop Time, Russian citizen Diana Loginova, known by the stage name Nayoka, was arrested for 13 days. She was charged under the article for organizing a mass gathering of people that resulted in a violation of public order. The court also arrested Stop Time's guitarist Alexander Orlov for the same period and under the same article. The musicians were accused of the band's concert at the corner of Nevsky Prospect obstructing access to the metro. However, according to media reports, there is no metro entrance at that location. The musician's lawyer, Sergei Loktev, emphasized in court that the complaint on which the new protocol was based was almost word for word copied from the previous report. An additional 13 days of arrest were given to Noka under the article for petty hooliganism. This was due to the use of profanity in one of the songs. The performer herself insisted that she did not organize anything, as she chose the spot to perform her song spontaneously. And the people who stopped to listen to her did not obstruct the flow of traffic. Loginova is a student at a music college. In the center of St. Petersburg, she performed songs by Monetochka, Zemfira, as well as the band Porno Filmy, whom the Russian authorities consider foreign agents. Earlier, the young street singer's mother stated that they had managed to raise enough funds for the girl's legal defense. Shortly before the next court hearing, it became known that Alexander Orlov had proposed marriage to Loginova.
It's not certain that we'll see or write to each other again anytime soon. By the way, we're going to get married.
It is reported that Orlov asked Loginova to marry him in a police van on October 17th when they were being taken to a detention center to serve their first administrative arrest. It has become known that in Yekaterinburg, street musician Evgeny Mikhailov was detained after he expressed support for the group Stop Time and singer Diana Loginova. He was kept in custody until the trial. The musician is being charged with petty hooliganism. Mikhailov said that Na Oko and the group Stop Time became examples of courage and openness for him. An activist in Moscow spoke out against the detention of street musicians. The young man staged a solo protest near the Tsoy Wall on Old Arbat in the center of the Russian capital. He held a sign that read, "Music is not a crime," and featured an image of Naoko dancing among swan-like law enforcement officers.
Viktor Tsoy, whose memory I am now standing near, said that a person must first and foremost be free from any external circumstances, and above all, preserve their humanity. And I really want all of us to keep our humanity and hold on to that freedom within ourselves. To perform, to sing what we like, to do what we enjoy, and say what we want to say.
Another activist in Moscow staged a picket demanding the release of the musicians from Stop Time.
The Russian dictator Vladimir Putin will lose the war, and Russia's situation is becoming increasingly desperate. This is what political scientist Mark Brolin writes in an article for The Telegraph. According to him, because of the war unleashed against Ukraine, Russia is increasingly turning into a vassal of China. Having lost Western oil markets, the country has achieved only partial control over Ukrainian territory at the cost of enormous human and economic losses. At the same time, Europe and the United States are acting in concert. EU countries are strengthening their defense sector and reducing their dependence on Russian energy. And American sanctions have increased pressure on the occupier's oil sector. Fearing secondary sanctions, Chinese and Indian companies have reduced their purchases of Russian oil. According to the author of the article, the myth of Russia as a great power is close to being debunked. Mark Brolin concludes that Russia cannot wage war forever. And to bring peace closer, pressure on the aggressor country must be increased. Recently, the Ukrainian armed forces have been successfully attacking military factories and oil refining facilities on Russian territory. In addition, the defense forces have achieved certain successes on the front line. Despite active enemy attacks, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has confirmed the liberation of 2 settlements in Donbass, Kucherev Yar and Suketsky. Soon it became known that the defense forces had liberated another settlement, Zatishok. According to reports from the General Staff, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Russia's losses have amounted to 1,139,000 Russian military personnel.
Russia has conducted tests of the Poseidon underwater vehicle, Russian leader Vladimir Putin announced during a meeting with the occupiers fighting against Ukraine.
For the very first time, it was not only possible to successfully launch it from the carrier submarine by means of the starting engine, but also to activate the onboard nuclear power unit, which was the essential system on which the device operated for a certain period of time.
The dictator stated that the power of the Poseidon far exceeds that of the Sarmat intercontinental missile.
There is nothing in the world like the Sarmat, and we don't have it on active duty yet, but it will be deployed soon. But the Poseidon significantly surpasses the Sarmat in terms of power.
Putin added that, supposedly, there is nothing in the world that can match the Poseidon in terms of speed, and nothing will appear in the near future. The dictator also insists that there are no means of intercepting this missile. The Russian Poseidon is one of the most mysterious projects in the modern Russian arsenal. It is officially positioned as an unmanned underwater vehicle with a nuclear engine capable of carrying a super high-yield nuclear warhead. There is little concrete information about this weapon of the Russian Federation in open sources. It is known that the Poseidon is a giant autonomous torpedo that can travel underwater over intercontinental distances. It is designed to strike coastal targets. The Poseidon is about 20 meters long, up to 2 meters in diameter, and weighs up to 100 tons. And just a few days earlier, Putin held a meeting with the head of Russia's general staff, where he boasted about the test of the Oreshnik nuclear missile.
This is truly a unique product which no one else in the world possesses. Now, at this stage, the decisive tests have been completed as planned.
At that time, Gerasimov reported to Putin about the test of a cruise missile with unlimited range and a nuclear power unit, which was conducted on October 21st.
A multi-hour flight of the missile was carried out, during which it covered a distance of 14,000 kilometers. And that's not the limit. And
on a nuclear power unit.
On a nuclear propulsion system.
As Andrei Ryzhenko, a retired captain of the first rank, told the Union agency, the Oreshnik could be shot down dozens of times during its flight. According to him, this cruise missile is subsonic and in its shape resembles the KH-101 or Caliber missile. In turn, US President Donald Trump responded to the statement by Russian dictator Vladimir Putin about the tests of the Oreshnik missile. Answering journalists' questions, he reminded Putin that the US has nuclear submarines located not far from Russia.
They know that we have a nuclear submarine, the largest in the world, right off their shores.
Trump noted that he is not playing games with Russia. In his opinion, Putin should be thinking about ending the war he started against Ukraine, not about testing missiles.
He should put an end to the war. A war that was supposed to last 1 week, but is now in its 4th year. That's what he should be doing, instead of testing missiles.
Russia has previously conducted multiple tests of the Oreshnik, all of which ended in failure. For example, in 2019, to the west of the city of Arkhangelsk, an explosion occurred during an attempt to lift a cruise missile from the seabed near the Russian Navy's missile test range. And on October 22nd, the Russians launched a Yars intercontinental ballistic missile in Kamchatka. The range of the Yars, according to the aggressor country, is up to 12,000 kilometers.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has unveiled the first Turkish-made tank. According to him, the country's defense industry has delivered the first models of the Altay tank, which was manufactured in Turkey, to the armed forces. At the official opening of the tank factory in Ankara, Erdogan stated that the facility will produce 8 tanks and 10 Oltuk armored personnel carriers each month. The Turkish leader stated that during government trials, the tanks covered a distance of 35,000 kilometers and fired 3,700 combat rounds. The Altay tank is based on the South Korean K-2 Black Panther tank. Its main armament is a 120mm caliber gun. Erdogan also spoke about other achievements of Turkey in the defense sector. According to him, Turkey holds 65% of the global UAV market. In addition, the country has risen to 11th place in the world in terms of arms exports, and products from its defense enterprises are supplied to 180 countries worldwide. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan noted that the country's dependence on foreign arms manufacturers has decreased over the past decade from more than 80% to less than 20%.
We are striving to eliminate any dependence on external suppliers, including for the provision of critical components for the Altay tanks.
Turkey has the second largest army in NATO after the United States of America. It is one of the few armies in the alliance with direct combat experience, including participation in operations in Afghanistan, the Balkans, and Syria. On the morning of October 29th, drones attacked the temporarily occupied Crimea. According to the Telegram channel Crimean Wind, at around 6:30 a.m., there was a powerful strike in the village of Gvardeyskoye, as a result of which the Otan oil depot caught fire. Earlier, it had been attacked on October 17th and burned for several days. There is also a large fire observed in the area of the Simferopol CHP in the village of Grisovsky. According to the channel, the oil depot located nearby is burning there. Crimean Wind notes that yesterday, military fuel trucks covered with camouflage nets and drone protection were actively entering and leaving this oil depot. It is actively used to supply the Russian occupation army. Subscribers of Crimean Wind also report a likely strike near the village of Krylovka, close to the settlement of Mirny. There are military equipment depots located there. There are also Russian air defense positions nearby. Drones have once again attacked Russian regions as well. In particular, there was an attack on the Mari oil refinery, which is located in the village of Tabashino in the Republic of Mari El. UAVs attacked one of the local oil depots near the town of Novospaskoye in Russia's Ulyanovsk region. In addition, the Stavrolen chemical production facility in the Stavropol region was also hit. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported the alleged downing of 100 drones in several Russian regions and in the temporarily occupied Crimea. It is worth noting that the day before, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that strikes by Ukrainian defense forces on oil refining facilities deep inside Russia have had a significant impact on the aggressor country's economy. According to him, Russia has lost more than 20% of its oil refining capacity and up to 27% of its fuel production. He also reported that Ukraine has already used its domestically produced Flamingo and Ruta missiles against the enemy.
Donald Trump has accepted Putin's nuclear challenge. This could lead to a new nuclear arms race. The American president stated that he has instructed the Pentagon to begin nuclear weapons testing and that this process will start immediately. He wrote on his social network,
"In connection with the testing programs conducted by other countries, I have instructed the Department of Defense to begin testing our nuclear weapons on an equal footing."
Later, Donald Trump explained to the press that the publication about nuclear tests was necessary to respond to the actions of other countries and added that the time and place of the tests would be announced later.
"We have more nuclear weapons than anyone else. We don't conduct tests. We stopped them many years ago. But if others are conducting them, I believe it is appropriate for us to start testing as well."
Commenting on the demonstration test of the Oreshnik nuclear missile, which Russian dictator Vladimir Putin recently boasted about, the American leader reminded that the US had sent a nuclear submarine to the shores of Russia. So Russia should think about its own security before threatening others with nuclear weapons. Trump's statement was circulated by American media on the morning of October 27th.
"They know that we have an advanced nuclear submarine, the best in the world, right off their shores. So we don't need a missile to fly 8,000 miles.
Let us recall that the day before, Putin announced Russia's test of the Oreshnik cruise missile with a nuclear power unit.
After all, this is a truly unique product that no one else in the world has.
And then he stated that the Russians had tested the Poseidon. Trump's reaction may indicate that he is choosing a more forceful and decisive response to the nuclear saber-rattling that Putin resorted to after Washington increased pressure on the Kremlin to end the war in Ukraine. The last time the United States tested nuclear weapons was back in the year 1992, but after that, the country proposed testing its delivery systems, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarines, as well as bombers, according to Bloomberg.
U.S. President Donald Trump held a meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. According to Reuters, the meeting lasted an hour and 40 minutes. After the meeting, Trump stated that it was an amazing meeting and that many important decisions were made. Trump rated his meeting with the Chinese leader 12 out of 10 and announced reciprocal visits. After the meeting, Donald Trump announced that he had reduced tariffs on goods from China. The reduction will take effect immediately. The overall tariff rate on Chinese exports to the U.S. will drop from 57% to 47%. The American leader said that he discussed Russia's war against Ukraine with Xi.
"We talked with Xi about Ukraine for a long time. We will work together to do something about it. We agreed that both sides are bogged down in fighting."
International observer and Middle East affairs expert Khan Coughlin stated, the meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping could help achieve a breakthrough in his efforts to end the war in Ukraine. After all, according to the expert, Russia's military campaign is largely supported by Beijing, especially thanks to China's willingness to keep buying large volumes of Russian oil despite Western sanctions. In his article for The Telegraph, Coughlin writes, China is providing Moscow with technological support, supplying drones and missile systems that help the Russian army make up for significant losses on the battlefield. Ending the so-called no-limits partnership between the autocratic regimes of Moscow and Beijing has become one of the key goals of the Trump administration. It is noted that relations between Russia and China have always been complicated, including due to historical territorial disputes. For example, in Manchuria, which nearly led to open war in the 1960s. And although these disagreements were officially resolved in 2003, Moscow still remains wary of China's long-term plans. Another indicator of tension between Moscow and Beijing is China's reluctance to officially recognize Russian control over Ukrainian territories seized since 2014. This means that while she is willing to provide Russia with some support, he does not intend to enter into direct confrontation with the United States. Thus, the recent Trump-Xi summit in South Korea could play an important role in determining how willing China will be to continue supporting Putin in his war against Ukraine. Failing to persuade Putin to agree directly to a ceasefire, Trump may achieve this goal by striking a new trade deal with Beijing, as noted in the Telegraph article. Earlier, it became known that the largest Chinese state-owned oil companies have suspended purchases of Russian oil delivered by sea. As reported by Reuters, this happened after the United States imposed sanctions on the Russian oil companies Rosneft and Lukoil.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán announced an investigation into the fire that occurred on October 21st at the MOL oil refinery in Hungary. He did not rule out that it could have been caused by an external attack. Orbán wrote on Facebook,
"The investigation is in full swing. We still do not know whether it was an accident, a technical malfunction, or an external attack."
The Hungarian Prime Minister also hinted at a possible Ukrainian involvement, mentioning a statement by Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Syrskyi, who at one time advised the Ukrainians to blow up the Druzhba oil pipeline. Let's hope this is not the case, Orbán noted. He added that gasoline prices have already surged, so he instructed Economy Minister Marton Nagy to hold talks with the management of the energy company MOL and to emphasize that the company cannot make up for lost profits at the expense of consumers by raising fuel prices. Viktor Orbán is known for his anti-Ukrainian stance. He consistently opposes Ukraine's accession to the EU. Last year, on October 26th, at the European Union summit in Brussels, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán blocked a joint statement in support of Ukraine, which could have initiated negotiations on its accession to the European Union. Let us recall that on the night of October 21st, a fire broke out at Hungary's main oil refinery, which firefighters managed to contain by midday. The oil refinery, located in Százhalombatta, which is Hungary's only major oil processing plant, primarily refines crude oil that is imported from Russia.
On October 29th, Russian occupiers demonstratively raised the tricolor flag on the stele in Ukrainian Pokrovsk. However, within an hour, the enemy flag was destroyed according to the monitoring project Deep State. At the same time, the project notes that the situation in the city remains difficult as the enemy continues to amass infantry. Ukraine's defense forces are making great efforts to inflict maximum losses on the enemy.
The city is a large grey zone since there are still plenty of our positions south of the railway. At the same time, it is true that quite a few occupiers have managed to infiltrate north of the railway.
The 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces also reports that the Russians continue their attempts to encircle the Pokrovsk agglomeration.
To carry out their plan to encircle the Pokrovsk agglomeration, the enemy has deployed about 11,000 troops. The enemy groups that managed to infiltrate the city aim to advance to the northwest and north of Pokrovsk.
It is noted that overall, in the area of responsibility of the 7th Air Assault Corps, the enemy has amassed about 27,000 troops, around 100 tanks, up to 260 armored fighting vehicles, and up to 160 artillery pieces and mortars. The map released by the 7th Corps shows the enemy's likely plan to encircle the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the main objective of the Russian Federation right now is to capture the city of Pokrovsk. Political analyst and military expert Kirilo Sazonov says, for Putin, Pokrovsk is the main point on the front.
It is becoming the most important, the most intense, because all efforts are concentrated there.
According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on October 29th, our defenders stopped 55 assault actions by the aggressor in the Pokrovsk direction. In the Kramatorsk direction, the defense forces successfully stopped 2 enemy attempts to advance. In the Kostyantynivka direction, the enemy carried out 24 attacks. In the Siversk, Slobozhansk and Kursk directions, there were 5 combat clashes. In the southern Slobozhansk direction, the enemy also launched 5 assaults. In the Kupiansk direction, there were 15 attacks by the invaders. In the Lyman direction, the enemy attacked 17 times. In the Sloviansk direction, the armed forces of Ukraine repelled 7 enemy attacks. In the Oleksandrivka direction, the enemy carried out 21 attacks. In the Huliaipol direction, the defense forces repelled an enemy attack near the settlement of Zeleny High. In the Orekhiv direction, there were 5 combat clashes. In the Pridniprovsk direction, Ukrainian units repelled 4 enemy assaults toward the Antonivsky Bridge. Meanwhile, dictator Vladimir Putin claimed that in Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian armed forces are allegedly blocked and surrounded. The command of the Ukrainian armed forces refuted Putin's statement. The Joint Forces Group of the Ukrainian Armed Forces stated that any claims about the encirclement of Ukrainian troops in Kupiansk are fiction and fantasy, not based on any actual data on the ground.
If the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin were not a war criminal, one might almost feel sorry that in his old age he is once again forced to make a fool of himself and repeat the lies of his own generals. Lies that not even his loyal audience or the Russian elites can believe.
Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko also commented on the situation in Kupiansk following Putin's statements.
We really do have a lot of units operating around Kupiansk. As of today, I believe the situation has been stabilized.
UAF serviceman Kirilo Sazonov said Putin's claim of encircling Ukrainian forces is false.
I'll add from myself, this isn't the first time he's lied. Don't be so quick to fall for it.
Sazonov added that the Ukrainian armed forces pushed the occupiers back from Kucheryavye Yar and Novoshakovo.
Dobropilya direction. There, Ukraine's defense forces continue to press those who broke through. Their logistics rely solely on drones. They've gone on the defensive, completely dug in, not making any moves anymore, but that didn't save them. Their supply, well, from drones, you understand yourself, is unstable.
Since the start of the full-scale war against Ukraine, Russia has lost more than 1,140,000 people. The losses of the Russian invaders over the past day amounted to 960 people.
Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrskyi, responded to Russia's claims about blocking Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. Fierce fighting continues in the Pokrovsk direction. Enemy infantry is trying to gain a foothold in the urban area, avoiding direct clashes while Ukrainian forces are conducting strike and search operations and improving defensive positions, the commander-in-chief's statement said. According to him, the situation is difficult, but the claims made by Russian propaganda about the alleged encirclement of Ukrainian defense forces in Pokrovsk as well as in Kupiansk do not correspond to reality.
At the same time, in Pokrovsk, enemy infantry, while avoiding direct clashes, is gathering in the urban area and frequently changing their locations. Therefore, the top priority is to detect and destroy them.
The Joint Forces grouping also stated that Russian reports about the encirclement of Ukrainian troops are fabrications and fantasies that are not supported by data on the ground. The day before, Putin made a false statement about the situation in Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. According to him, the Ukrainian armed forces have allegedly been surrounded. The dictator cynically stated that he supposedly has no objection to allowing the media, including Ukrainian and foreign outlets, into the area where the enemy is encircled. But he claims to be concerned that there could be provocations from the Ukrainian side.
We are ready to cease hostilities for a certain period, for several hours, for 2, 3, or 6 hours, so that groups of journalists can enter.
At the same time, information appeared in the media that Russia is preparing a large-scale provocation. The Ministry of Defense of the aggressor country stated that they allegedly received an order from Putin to allow foreign journalists into the Pokrovsk and Kupiansk areas. The Ukrainian side has not confirmed this. This announcement may indicate Russia's intention to carry out a provocation so that later it can shout to the whole world about allegedly shelled journalists, while at the same time filling the front line with as many troops as possible. Trump's team doesn't trust Putin either. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance believes that the time has come for Ukraine and Russia to end the war. The politician questioned Putin's territorial gains and pointed out that Russia is losing too many people.
On October 4th, a closed summit of representatives from 35 countries of the Coalition of the Willing will be held in Madrid, where further assistance to Ukraine will be discussed. At the same time, as El Mundo reports, the meeting is scheduled to take place under conditions of maximum secrecy.
participants have been warned that mobile phones are prohibited. They will need to hand them in at a designated location and are also asked not to disclose any information about the meeting on public platforms or social networks.
The summit will consist of 2 sessions focused on providing assistance to Kyiv. In the first session, participants will discuss how to meet Ukraine's urgent financial needs, particularly those related to its military and defense efforts. They will also discuss how to coordinate initiatives aimed at increasing pressure on Russia. In the second session, the parties will try to develop a common approach to security guarantees for Ukraine. At the same time, Ukrainian Foreign Ministry representative Oreshnik told journalists that there is nothing secret about this meeting, as the Spanish newspaper presented the information incorrectly.
The Spanish newspaper has presented the information incorrectly. This is a regular meeting at the level of political directors with an appropriate agenda. There is nothing secret or extraordinary about it. We are in contact with the Spanish side regarding the preparation of this meeting and will remain in contact after it concludes.
Le Figaro, citing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, reports that the Flamingo missile has been used in real operations 9 times. The publication, referring to statements by the President and Firepoint's Chief Technical Officer Irina Terek, reports that the guarantor noted this is the best Ukrainian cruise missile currently in existence. The article states that the next stage of missile production is currently being considered, particularly the development of ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, the President of Ukraine announced that long-range strikes against the Russian Federation will take place in the near future.
Ukraine and its allies are jointly developing a peace plan. It will be a single document. There are no alternative plans from individual countries. This was stated by the head of the President's office, Andriy Yermak.
There are currently many reports in the media about alternative plans. Supposedly, the US has one, the EU has another, and some individual countries have their own. I want to state clearly that this is not the case.
As the head of the President's office emphasized, the result will be a single document jointly developed by Ukraine and its partners, which will take Ukrainian interests into account.
Presidents Zelensky and Trump, as well as European leaders, all agree that any negotiations must begin with a ceasefire along the current line of contact. All partners believe that, for diplomats to work successfully, the fighting must be stopped. We highly value President Trump's leadership as a peacemaker and believe that he is the one who can help Ukraine achieve a just, lasting peace, secured by reliable security guarantees.
A draft with 12 points of a peace plan for Ukraine was leaked online. The document was published by journalists from the European Service of Radio Liberty. The draft consists of 12 steps and is based on the principle of a ceasefire first, and its previous official name was Elements of Peace in Ukraine. The first stage is a ceasefire, which will begin 24 hours after both sides accept this plan. Next, the front line will be frozen at the positions it held at the moment the ceasefire began. Monitoring of the ceasefire will begin immediately under the leadership of the United States, using satellites, drones, and other technological means. The second stage includes peace negotiations and the restoration of Ukraine. At the same time, it became known that the United States cancelled the meeting between Trump and Putin in Budapest due to Russia's unacceptable demands regarding peace in Ukraine, according to the Financial Times. Russia sent a memorandum to Washington demanding territorial concessions and a reduction of the army, as well as guarantees that Ukraine will never join NATO. After that, there was a conversation between US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, after which the Secretary of State reported to Trump that Moscow was not showing readiness for negotiations.
One of the Oreshniks was destroyed on the territory of the Russian Federation, reported the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, during a meeting with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Until now, we have never made this public, but we can say that one of the 3 Oreshniks was successfully destroyed on their territory at Kapustin Yar by the forces of the GUR, SBU, and SVR.
As Malyuk reported, this was communicated exclusively to the President of Ukraine, and a few presidents of other countries were also aware of it.
The destruction was 100%. It was a very successful mission. At that time, the name Oreshnik was not used by the general public, and the Russians had not yet posed a significant threat with it. If I'm not mistaken, this was the summer before last.
At the same time, Zelensky stated that the Russian Federation plans to deploy the Oreshnik on the territory of Belarus. According to him, Western partners should pay attention to this.
We understand that its approximate range is 5,500 kilometers, and there is a dead zone of 700 kilometers. In other words, Europeans, especially those in Eastern Europe, should pay attention to this. In fact, everyone needs to pay attention to these risks.
The head of the Security Service of Ukraine also reported that since the beginning of the year, the defense forces have carried out nearly 160 successful strikes on oil extraction and oil refining facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation.
This has led to a deficit of more than 20% in the domestic petroleum products market and a ban on gasoline exports until the end of this year.
Malyuk added that these are legitimate targets since 90% of the budget of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation comes from oil extraction and oil refining. There is currently no encirclement of the defense forces by the occupiers in the Pokrovsk area, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated.
Our forces are in Pokrovsk.
Near Pokrovsk, our forces are in control of the situation. There is a tense situation with the enemy on all sides there. All commanders on the ground understand how encirclement could happen. It can't. People are the most important thing. Everyone understands this. But you have to know, they don't dominate there today. There are many of them, but to say that they are winning is not true.
Zelensky added that the situation in Pokrovsk is complex as the Russian Federation has concentrated approximately 170,000 of its troops in this area.
In Pokrovsk?
There are Russians in Pokrovsk. Our forces are destroying them little by little because we have to preserve our personnel. As for what Russia says, I've been in some offices, very different ones, and I've seen various maps. I've seen a map of military operations on the territory of Ukraine that looks strange. I've seen other maps as well. For some reason, we have different maps of the actual fighting in Ukraine, Russia, Europe, and the USA. And at some point, we reconcile all this, figure out where the problems are, and where there are manipulations.
Zelensky responded to the information that the Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin is allegedly planning to come to Pokrovsk.
Go ahead, by all means. Everyone will applaud because we know how it will end.
The head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, also spoke about the situation in Pokrovsk.
The enemy first declared that they would take it any day now, a year and 3 months ago. In that time, they have advanced 7 kilometers. These so-called mega-experts have only managed to cover 7 kilometers, but they've lost tens and tens of thousands killed. I'm not even mentioning the wounded, but today everyone there has joined forces. Every day they're simply being ground down there.
The day before, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Syrskyi, held a meeting with the brigade commanders stationed in the Pokrovsk direction.
The enemy is increasing its activity in the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad agglomeration area. That's why I visited this important direction again.
Earlier, analysts from Deep State reported on the Russian advance in the Pokrovsk area.
Explosions rocked Russia on the night of Friday, October 31st. Energy facilities and oil refineries are on fire. Drones attacked a thermal power plant in Oriol. The moment of the attack was captured by surveillance cameras. Governor Andrei Klitschkov confirmed the attack on the Oriol thermal power plant. According to him, the air defense system was activated, but hits could not be avoided.
As a result of the drone being shot down, debris fell on the territory of the Oriol thermal power plant, causing damage to the power supply equipment. There were no casualties or fires at the facility. Special services personnel are at the scene. Repair work to eliminate the consequences is ongoing.
The city lost power after the attack on the thermal power plant. According to the Telegram channel Astra's Sint Analysis, one of the strikes on the Oriol thermal power plant hit the open switchgear. The Oriol thermal power plant is the largest source of electricity and heat generation in the region. It supplies both electricity and heat. In the Vladimir region, the Vladimir substation in the settlement of Energetic was attacked. There is a major fire at the facility. In Vladimir, after the drone attack, civilian traffic was blocked and schools in the Energetic neighborhood were closed. The Vladimir substation is a major energy facility in the region. Its installed capacity is about 4,000 megavolt amperes. The substation is a key hub with numerous power lines ranging from 110 to 750 kilovolts extending from it. It serves the region's power system. In Yaroslavl, explosions can also be heard in the area of the Pauslavneftianos oil refinery. Local residents specify that the explosions are heard in the oil construction area. This is a few kilometers from the refinery. Due to the drone attack, the airport in Yaroslavl was closed. At the same time, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that during the night, air defense systems allegedly shot down 130 Ukrainian fixed-wing drones over Russian regions. Specifically, 9 over the Oriol region, 6 over the Yaroslavl region, and the report does not mention the Vladimir region. Mass protests against conscription took place in Israel. This could cost Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu his position. Tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews took to the streets in Israel to protest against mandatory military service, according to the Israeli press. The demonstrators demanded to preserve the legislation exempting students of religious schools from conscription. According to the publication, 800 people have recently been detained out of nearly 7,000 ultra-Orthodox draft dodgers. Israeli police reported that roads leading to Jerusalem were blocked and 2,000 personnel were deployed to ensure security in the city. The local railway announced the closure of the main Navon train station. During coverage of the protests, Channel 12 reporter Inba Tweezer was attacked. Plastic bottles were thrown at her while she was trying to broadcast live from the scene, reports Inet News. Disagreements in Israeli society over the current exemption from conscription for ultra-Orthodox Jews have become the most serious threat to the government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The demonstrators are mainly supporters of 2 ultra-Orthodox parties that joined Netanyahu's ruling coalition almost 3 years ago. Their decision to leave the coalition in July and boycott legislative votes has paralyzed the government, writes the Times of Israel. The wave of protests was a response to the decision of Israel's Supreme Court made in June 2024, which unanimously allowed the conscription of ultra-Orthodox students into the army.